And another person I met at one of our release events is our next reader, Rowan O'Neill. I met 4 years ago when he came to the release of our very first issue of Catamaran at the Tannery Arts Center in the big digital media room. We had a big release party, and Stephen Lynch, who lived at the Tannery, brought Rowan in to introduce him to me. And I immediately fell in love with his work, and he appeared in our third issue. And now he's back with us again. He's graduated from college, and he's still writing. And so I would like to introduce Rowan. He is a virtuoso violin player in the Baroque style. I think virtuoso. We'll just say Baroque violinist. And an amazing author. Please welcome Rowan O'Neill.
When I was 15, I was given an assignment in my 9th grade English class, which was to select 3 individuals from all of history and society with whom I would like to meet. I believe I selected Socrates, Democritus, and, as I remember stating at the time, the minimalist composer Philip Glass. Some years before, I discovered my mother's copy of Satyagraha, which is Glass's second opera, and felt utterly swept away by it. I suppose there was a bit of nostalgia mixed in, since I had beautiful and mysterious memories from my early childhood, when we still lived in San Francisco, with my mother listening to Einstein on the beach in Satyagraha as we drove down the Embarcadero. At the age of 12 or so, I found these cassette tapes, antiquated even then. I took to listening to them on our stereo system, blasting at full volume, whenever I was forced to back in the living room or partake in other housework. Looking back at it now, I am not entirely certain as to why I added Glass to that list. The first 2 being philosophers were, I believe, natural choices for a meeting, given that when one meets, one is supposed to talk, and talking is the ideal purview of a philosopher. At the time, my reason for choosing Glass was less clear to me, though of this fact I was unaware. Recently, I was given cause to reassess this choice. The occasion was one of the annual performances in which Glass takes part during the Days and Nights Festival at the Henry Miller Library in Big Sur. Due to the difficulty of the roads and the lack of parking, the festival offers a wine reception in Carmel prior to a shuttle ride to the library. In order to encourage people to arrive punctually, so that the shuttles are not delayed, it was announced that everyone would be entered into a raffle. As they arrived, the prize being assigned a copy of Philip Glass's autobiography. Due to traffic and general ineptitude, my mother and I arrived at the reception at the exact moment that the organizer arrived at the ticket booth to collect the little square wooden tray which contained the stubs for the raffle. The attendant ripped out 2 tickets and placed them at the top of the pile, a stroke of luck given that we had arrived 5 minutes after the raffle was supposed to have ended. Therefore, the situation was such that we had 2 tickets and a small raffle which was to be drawn from this very same small and flat tray, which, furthermore, had the effect of ensuring that the tickets were not sufficiently mixed together. As the man arrived to take off the little pile of tickets, it suddenly struck me that I had had a very good chance of winning, which I found rather shocking, as all my childhood experiences with raffles had involved disappointment, fury, and lost allowance money. The organizer attempted to mix the tickets up, but the flat and small nature of the tray made this a task requiring more than a cursory attempt at randomization. And indeed, I believe that my assessment was proved to be accurate, as I, who had arrived last, was awarded Glass's book, Words Without Music. In that moment, the title of the book made me laugh, though later in the evening it would lead to a moment of cynical speculation on my part. My mother told me that she took my winning as a positive sign with regards to my future as a composer. I worried that it was simply more proof that the world is unfair. The concert was held outdoors in what one might term the yard in front of the tiny shack which houses the bookstore at the library. I took my seat with a certain amount of trepidation. You see, my first experience of Philip Glass live had been a performance which he gave at the San Francisco Symphony Hall along with some electronic experimental group when I was 15 or 16. The experience had been rather traumatic for me. I found myself bored to a painful degree and repulsed by what one supposed to be music. I had expected the resplendent glory of a Satyagraha or a Koyaanisqatsi, and instead I was met with something which might be described as the electronic equivalent of banging on a can with a heavy dose of monotony. It was with this in mind that I remarked to an old English teacher of mine who had never before listened to Philip Glass and who also happened to be at the concert, that I hoped she would not find her first experience of Glass too boring. I had planned the moments after the concert ended carefully in my mind. I remembered the assignment for my 9th grade English class, and I thought that I would remark that at the time my chances of meeting any of them, Socrates, Democritus, Glass, seemed equally remote, yet I was now surprised to learn that this was not the case. Neither when I was 15 nor am I now a person for whom celebrity carries much import. The assignment had been difficult for me, in fact, because the thought of speaking to someone who I would not really know simply made me feel anxious. Picking philosophers was an easier solution to the problem, since I would speak to them in order to learn. As I walked a few short steps to the stage where Glass remained putting away his music, I anxiously wondered why on earth I'd picked him. One answer immediately appeared to me. My adolescent self had worried that all the other students would pick celebrities who were alive and probably musicians, and that furthermore, my rattling off of philosophers whom I admired was merely a cop-out. That is to say, I selected Philip Glass so as to add a drop of normalcy to my list of people I'd like to meet. As I stood there before the stage trying to draw his attention, I realized that my 15-year-old self had not considered what I would actually say, and that my 24-year-old self had only considered talking about my 15-year-old self. This realization produced a sudden deficit in my reserves of prepared lines, and so my frantic mind fell upon the next logical step. Why did I actually want to meet Philip Glass? At age 15, it is clear that I did not really care to meet him in actuality. What I cared about was his music, his work, which I can have on demand whenever I want, so an actual meeting would seem to be a superfluity. After a few moments, he came up to the edge of the stage rather grudgingly and bearing a pen. Despite the fact that I'm much taller than him, he towered over me, and with the stage lights behind him proved to be a rather blinding apparition. A state of affairs which I found to be annoyingly apropos. He asked me if I wanted the book signed, and I said, "Oh, no, I don't think that's really necessary." My action had brought other hopefuls to the stage, and so he said, "Okay," and turned to one of the other people whom I had inflicted upon him, and who proceeded to push in front of me. I stood there feeling adrenalized and mute, feeling violated by the hipsters and their autographed books and vinyl records which they had brought to be signed. For me, celebrity autographs have never seemed particularly interesting beyond the knowledge that certain items, when bearing an autograph, gain in value. And so there I was, surrounded by heathens, for whom a bit of pen scribbled on paper had been some deep emotional value which I was utterly failing to appreciate. At the raffle, the organizer had said that Mr. Glass, upon learning that the book which I had won would be given to some random stranger, replied that he would write the book out to whom may be concerned. He did not, in fact, do this. My mother suggested that I ask him to write the book out to me. I replied that would lower the value. As I say this now, I realize that such an action might have at least caused him to learn my name. The organizer noticed me standing there and informed Mr. Glass that it was I who had won the signed copy of his memoir, which they had auctioned off in a failed attempt to encourage punctuality. Glass said, "Oh," and came back up to the edge of the stage, rather awkwardly offering a hand to shake, which I rather awkwardly took, not entirely certain as to why he thought I wanted to shake his hand. I told him that I was quite pleased to meet him because I composed. He replied, "Oh, how is that going?" I sort of shrugged the question off, but I suppose that I hoped that because he had wanted to start a center for composers in Big Sur, maybe he would be genuinely interested. I told him that I composed in the Baroque style. He moved on to someone seeking an autograph who had been drawn back up to the edge of the stage by his reappearance. In that moment, I realized that what my 24-year-old self had wanted from a meeting with Philip Glass was for someone to take my music seriously. I should have answered his question. I should have said, "No one will play my music."